side?
Yeah.
Be right here.
Sorry, I moved this so we can see.
So that's
Randal Wyatt.
that song is out now, the full song. Kind of like a feel-good, morbid song, but and I get a fraction of a cent every time you play it. So play it a lot. Well, thanks everybody for coming out, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, all right. So you ready?
I think so, and I'm gonna look at my phone every now and then because it's early, and this is talking and this early is tough for me.
So there's a lot of people in here today. Thank you all for coming out. And a lot don't know about taking ownership. So I'll give you the floor. Just give them a brief rundown of taking ownership.
My elevator speech.
Yes.
So it's a community-based organization that provides reparations to the black community in the form of free repairs and renovations to black homeowners and financial assistance to black small businesses. We do it through 3 programs. We have our home improvement program where we raise money, hire contractors and vendors. We try to prioritize BIPOC, LGBTQ, women-owned contractors and vendors to provide services that are requested by our homeowners. We provide financial assistance to black small businesses to keep them in the neighborhoods where they built their business, where their customer base is. And then we have our community impact program that's volunteer-based. All of you can be a part of it, where we do seasonal maintenance for our black homeowners, come out, do landscaping, yard cleanup, because a big part of displacement comes from lack of maintenance. Gentrification, affluent people move in and they start complaining about the aesthetics of their black and brown neighbors who have a significantly lower income, or a lot of them are senior citizens who are on fixed incomes, and that leads to fines, complaint-based fines that leave them even more vulnerable to predatory real estate practices. So we come out, clean up their yards, make their houses stay nice. That way the city will leave them alone. And those are our 3 programs.
Yeah.
And I started this, thank you. And I started this back in 2020. During a lot of my studies at PSU actually prompted this. I got a degree in black studies and sociology, so I was studying white supremacy in depth and learned white supremacy is really predicated on land ownership, keeping land, taking land, excluding others from getting land. It's the fastest way to grow wealth and pass it on to future generations. So just trying to keep land in the black community.
Nice. All right. So you talked a little bit about your education, that background, and we see obviously from the music video that you're a very creative individual. How does that creativity play a role in your creation of taking ownership?
Well, I mean, anytime you're trying to solve a problem, you got to be creative about it. And then if you start something from the ground up that's new, you got to be creative about the model. You got to be, and so that's what it took. And I'm always evolving the model to be efficient, work better, to include more people. And it doesn't always work out. At one time, I tried a service where we pretty much were pimping out volunteers. We allowed allies to hire our volunteers to do yard work for them, and then they would pay us money. But our allies, our volunteers, were like, we don't want to do work for white people. Like we want to work with the black folks. So that didn't work. So we ended up, so we pivoted away from that and instead started doing like sponsorships. So doing these volunteer programs, there's overhead costs. It's not just free to us. And we had a lot of big corporations and companies reaching out to kind of do the photo op and look good and be like, look, we like black people. And I was like, look, you guys got a lot of money. You need to cough up some money if you want this photo op with us and work with us. So that's actually been really impactful. And that's just some of the creative ways that you gotta do this. You gotta be creative about who you integrate into the program, how to utilize your resources and partnerships to get this work done, especially when you're small like we are. And don't always have a lot of resources to get this done. We're just a scrappy, small group trying to get some big impact, taking on a tall task.
Yeah. So I love what you said about evolving. So kind of stick with that. And taking ownership is something that's brand new to Portland. You don't really have a model out there to directly follow. So as you're working, how do you know when to make a change, make an adjustment to your vision?
I mean, when stuff doesn't work, when people start complaining. I mean, I think that's the big thing is just the impact, the feedback. We are big on getting surveys out to our homeowners, to our volunteers, figuring out what's working, what's not working, and we're very receptive. I mean, this is a brand new thing. I don't have all the tools. I don't even have a background in housing. This was just like something that kind of chose me and fell in my lap. So I need a lot of guidance. I need a lot of support and insight from the community and from people who have been running similar organizations that do similar work. So I'm very lucky to have a lot of partnerships with people who have been doing this type of stuff for 20 plus years.
So do you ever run into individuals that are skeptical and are unfamiliar that it leads to that? How do you address that?
I mean, yeah, when we first started out, I had a lot of realtors, for some reason, be like, well, what about white folks? What about white people getting their houses worked on? I'm like, have you heard of the Donation Land Act? Y'all got like, in 1860, you got like 300 acres of land. You guys gotten a lot. GI bills, all kinds of things. You've gotten a lot of handouts from the government when the general public meant just white. So it's a lot about teaching the history. This country does a fantastic job at making sure we don't know our true history of America. I mean, like critical race theory, they're trying to eliminate that. So a lot of times when I get that feedback, I just send them a book recommendation. Hey, read this, man. I don't have time to educate everybody. That's the hard part about this work is constantly having, BIPOC people have to carry the burden of diversity and equity and inclusion, like DEI work. We have to teach about our history, and it's tough, man. It's like it's raising up trauma to have to talk about the plight of your culture, your community all the time to justify your mission. So yeah, a lot of times I'll just send them a book, and then I do stuff like this where I do get to share my thoughts, and I'm blessed to get platforms to be able to talk a little bit.
It's always tough when you have to explain 400 years of trauma in 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
You get it. I know you know.
So you're obviously, this work is difficult, and you need to find inspiration somewhere. And then in your life, where do you find the inspiration from to just keep going?
Well, I've been a father since I was 19 years old to twins who are now 19 years old, which is a trip. They're my biggest inspiration. I mean, being that young and having two people come into my life that are counting on me to make a better place for them, a better world. So I knew immediately when I had them, like, a lot of times we live in a capitalistic society, so individualism is promoted. But I knew early, like, my kids aren't going to be in the house all the time. I'm not going to shelter them. They're going to be in the community. So right. I dedicated myself to community activism and trying to make a better place for them, for their future. So they're my number one inspiration. And then, see, this is where I got to look at my phone because.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, like I said earlier, I feel like this work chose me. I really do. Like, I had no idea it was going to take off the way it did. With that, I feel like kind of like my ancestors chose me to do this. I have a lot of commitment to it. That's what inspires me is I know what my ancestors went through because I have an education on the history, far worse than what I've gone through. So if they're able to make a difference and provide a better life for me, then I should be able to do it too. And I just get inspired by other people making change in the community. There's a lot of people out here doing great work. And it's just beautiful to see what especially during the pandemic, so many beautiful like Black-led and BIPOC-led, LGBTQ-led organizations sprouted out of that, and so that inspires me a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, this work again is extremely hard, and for someone who's thinking about getting into this type of work, what kind of tips would you give them as far as how can they deal with this work because it's so burdensome physically, emotionally. You got to deal with a lot of red tape, politics. So how do you deal with that?
My advice would be, when I started this, it was just straight activism. I didn't think it was going to be a nonprofit or organization or anything. I was just like, let's make moves. I thought society was changing. I thought, things. So I just was like, send me money, I'll make a difference. Now I would say I would advise people to go get their 501c3 immediately, raise money, and hire staff immediately, because this has burnt me out just because I've worn so many hats. I just haven't had staff. I didn't know it was going to blow up the way it did. So if somebody can do so, I would just suggest a lot more planning, work-life balance. I didn't grow up in a place where we talked about self-care. I didn't know what the hell self-care was, especially being a 19-year-old father. It was just like my parents were like, oh, well, you're having unprotected sex. You better go get you know what the consequences are. You better go get a job and bust your ass. So I would just suggest finding that work-life balance, taking care of yourself. After my father passed away a couple of years ago, I really started prioritizing my mental health and just taking care of myself. So highly suggest that to anybody getting into this type of work.
Yeah, that's great. So you also wear many hats just outside of the organization, right? So that's a big hat you wear as far as being taking ownership. You've done at-risk youth work. You obviously have a music career that's been going on, and you
not so much anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that looked recent.
True. Yeah. Every now and then I dabble.
All right. So, how do you juggle, those three things in your life?
Well, I don't do at-risk youth anymore, and not a lot of music, but how they have prepared me for this type of work. Well, I mean, the at-risk youth part, I worked for nonprofits, so I at least got to see what nonprofit world looked like. But I was on the other side. I wasn't doing all the logistical stuff, all the stuff I hate, like getting insurances and books and stuff like that. But the musical side, hip-hop world, and nonprofit world are really a lot alike. It's competitive as shit. I mean, it's like a whole bunch of people fighting for resources, people talking shit about each other behind their back. That's hip hop too, So hip hop, I grew to get thick skin doing that, I grew up in the scene battling people and stuff,
Right.
I battled you. So yeah, I think just the competitive nature, I'm up for it. You got to be creative in like how to set yourself apart from everybody else. Like what's gonna get the attention of this foundation and or this corporation or whatever who wants to give you money. And unfortunately, that really sucks. I hate that part about this all. That's just such an arm of capitalism, of schmoozing and begging for money all the time. That's not what I like. But I mean, I was built for this, so let's go get it. And it's for a good cause. So.
All right, that's perfect. Yeah. So we got this actively engaged crowd right here, and some people are probably wondering, how can I get involved with taking ownership? Can you give people like a brief rundown how they can get involved?
Oh yeah, it's so many ways. Donate money. That we need that. We need a lot of that. Even though this year we just got our nonprofit status, so actually it's been a really good year, thankfully. Been able to breathe a little bit. Last year was scary. I was updating my resume. It was looking rough, economy and everything. So that's one way, and that's a big way. We have over 500 volunteers signed up, which is incredible. But I always encourage people to sign up to be a volunteer. Our work parties are awesome. You come out, you're doing landscaping, decluttering jobs, stuff like that with other like-minded people. I know there's a lot of networking that goes on. People get their hands dirty. Our community impact director, Jed, is incredible. So I highly suggest that. You can submit your organization or company to our community resource list, which has a ton of different companies, organizations that are categorized by the community they identify with. So say you want to, hire a black-owned contractor, you can find it on there, or you want a Hispanic, or whatever. So I highly suggest inputting, submitting your organization or somebody else's on there. And yeah, those are the main ways. If you're a contractor, a vendor, you want to donate some labor, materials, things like that. There's a lot of ways, and it's all on the website.
Perfect.
But I got some questions for you, actually. So you don't know. So me and him, we've been close friends since we were 11. He's incredible. He's an educator. He's inspired me a lot. So I had to bring him on to my organization as a board president, and now I'm trying to kind of integrate him as a face of this as well.
Trying.
Because I can't be the face of this forever. I've been doing it for 5 years. I'm only one perspective. I can't speak for the black community all the time. And especially, even being light-skinned. There's a different experience being light-skinned, being dark-skinned, right?
Right.
So I want y'all to get to know Charles a little bit too. And you're a Portland native, so tell me your perspective. Like, why do you think this work is important?
Well, I grew up right off of Alberta Street. I remember when if you were drinking on Alberta, you'd be arrested. And it was nothing on there but a couple of shops that are still there. And I saw the process of it being gentrified and living in the neighborhood and having, my family home be impacted by gentrification process and seeing a house value go from, $100,000 when my parents bought it to $700,000 by the time we had to get out of there. That part really affected me when I first hearing about taking ownership and the movement that you were making, and then seeing so many of my friends deal with the same thing. And I would say during the process of gentrification, I remember one instance, and I was working at the Boys and Girls Club in North Portland, and that area was being gentrified. And I remember talking to some of the younger kids there, and I remember one kid was saying that, "Oh, I can't wait until we come back here," and he didn't realize that he wasn't going to be able to come back here, and it was the truth for a lot of them. And I think that really stuck with me for a long time. And then once taking ownership really started to grow legs, then I was like, I really started finding myself really drawn to this work, and I wanted to really jump on and make a difference.
Yeah, and this displacement's tough, like moving. A lot of us are getting pushed out east. I know when I became a dad, there's no way I could afford any kind of housing in our old neighborhood that we grew up in. And move this over here. And that's tough because a lot of the resources are still in like North Portland and Northeast Portland, right? Urban League's still right there off North Williams. And so, and a lot of those resources, so now people have to make long commutes to get the culturally specific resources, and it's tough. So, yeah, that's the reason I want to keep these homes in these communities and passed on to future generations. Not only that, also because of the wealth aspect.
Right.
These houses some of these people bought these houses for $40,000, and now somebody can move in there and have an $800,000. I just sold a house in Albina for crazy. It was crazy how much it went for. So yeah, so I hear you on that.
Yeah.
So you're just getting started with taking ownership. Can you talk a little bit about what's your role and how do you see your role evolving?
Yeah, I'm the board president, so I oversee like pretty much large budget projects that get presented, and I just either get a yay or nay on them. I'm able to work with you closely and kind of get the insights of it, conducting meetings with the board, and hopefully in the future I could take more of a role, more of a become more of a voice for taking ownership, more of a face for taking ownership, alleviate some of those pressures that you deal with, and free you up to allow you to be more creative and get you more on that path that you first started with before you got all this extra stuff. So my vision is to get taking ownership as far as it possibly can.
I appreciate that. And I've been throwing him into the Lions Den. I've been just like putting him on stages, and yeah. It's been great. He's been killing it too. And do you have a vision for Taking Ownership's future? What do you see?
You know what? I would love Taking Ownership to be adopted by other ethnic groups, minority groups in the city. I get approached by people from the indigenous community. I get people from the Hispanic community after I do presentations.
But what about the white community?
I've had that before. But I do get people from the white community saying, "Hey, how can I help?" Not like with my reparations as a white man. I don't get that a lot, but I have gotten that. But I think that would be great to kind of have those communities feed off that model. And also another big thing is have Taking Ownership in Black communities outside of Portland.
That's a big thing we're working on, actually. And I've been lucky enough to be flown out to like Philadelphia and some places on the East Coast to speak on panels. We're working on a playbook right now of like how this all works to give that out to different community leaders around the nation. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Portland's a very unique place, though. I always tell people I have a very unique, being a hip hop artist, I had my face out here a lot. I did community activism out here, all kinds of different projects. And, this is the whitest city in America, but our white folks here are very progressive in a lot of ways. And they are looking for ways to put their, places to put their money and their time that I've learned. And so I don't know if it's tougher in some other cities. When I went to Philly, I was like, man, your Black community is huge. I don't know what your ally community looks like, so I don't know how these things will work, but because I really do think Portland is a special place when it comes to being open to unique models, and y'all showed up for me at least. So thank you. And I know some other nonprofits that are doing fantastic work that are getting a lot of support too. So hopefully, though, we'll see if these models work in other places.
I mean, I think they will. I mean, even if they had to work on like a smaller scale, or what if the federal government decided to do something like this?
Oh, come on, man.
I love that.
They don't even want to teach about this stuff, Like, I mean, that's the goal, and that's what I thought when I first started this is going to get picked up by the city or something. Like, I just thought I was going to create a model that would get absolved by some bigger established thing. That's why I said I didn't think I would be doing this, leading this initiative. But then like the city early on starts dropping like $100,000-$200,000 projects on me. Like, hey, do you think you could fix this house up? I'm like, man, I just raised like $20,000. That's all I have. You're the city. You should be doing this. So yeah, I don't know. The federal government is doing everything they can to not even talk about it. So. We'll see. I don't know. Something's happening in San Francisco, though, right? Aren't they doing some reparations out there?
They got close.
Oh, yeah.
They got close. So more questions for you now?
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Is that okay with y'all? We're not boring you or anything? Okay. My energy level is low, I'm not going to lie.
All right. This is a great question here because you might have people here or people listening who aren't living in northeast Portland areas that are vulnerable to gentrification, right? And they're thinking about moving into these areas. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to be necessarily part of the gentrification problem.
Impossible, but yeah.
It might be impossible, but can you give them some kind of strategies, some kind of methods of easing their way into the community and not amplifying the problem?
Absolutely. I usually tell them about this place called Milwaukee, Oregon. No, I was playing. I'm kidding.
Yeah, what was that when I was in Milwaukee? I want someone to swap me out. I had to get out of there.
No, I'm playing. One thing I talk about a lot is compassion. when you move into these communities, know that you're going to have people that have been in these communities for generations. They're usually going to be black and brown. They're probably not going to make as much money as these new white affluent people moving into the communities. Their house might not be as nice as yours. And there are a lot of, like I said, in my experience, most black homeowners are senior citizens on fixed incomes. They don't even have the physical capacity to keep up with their house. I'm 39 years old and I can barely keep up in my house. And so I couldn't imagine being in my 70s and 80s. So instead of calling the city on them and being a snitch, which leads to fines and liens and leaves them even more vulnerable to developers that come in and try to do under market offers to them, go over there and like maybe see how you can help them. Maybe try to get an understanding why they're not keeping up with it. Nobody wants to live in a dilapidated house. Nobody wants their house to be unhealthy. There's probably a reason behind it, and a lot of times it's income. So I just push that. And also you can join my organization and you can do, volunteer work with them. But that's like the big thing is try to keep the culture around, be kind. Because when gentrification happens, it's not just the buildings coming up and the cost of living going up, but the culture changes. And people move in and they're not polite to the people that are there anymore. Now the people that lived in those communities feel like outsiders. So that's the tough part. So just try to keep some of the culture alive in these communities too. Don't knock down everything don't replace every shop, every barbecue place with an artesian bakery or something, or something, just like try to keep some culture alive and be compassionate.
Do you know anything like off the top of your head, like as far as a place people could go to educate themselves about the neighborhood, thinking about the culture of the neighborhood? People just might not be educated up on it.
I would say like Word is Bond does these walks, albino walks, where they talk about the neighborhood. African American Alliance for Homeownership does. We should probably talk. That's what I'm bringing you on. You're gonna have to do that.
That'd be great.
Those are some of the few that I do know of. Black Men's Wellness, and they talk a little bit. So those are some of the places I know that do education on the history of the community, and so people know. And I know in Albina they've kept like some there's some areas you can read up on, like, oh, this used to be a jazz club, and and what happened to it? So
Right. So Portland home values are just increasing. How do you prepare those in the community against predatory real estate practices?
Education. I'm just kind of telling them what it's going to look like, what to look out for. They are clever, and historically they would even tend to be churchgoers and whatever, try to have some commonality with the homeowners to get them to get an optional ARM loan or a subprime loan. I mean, that's 2008 crash. Those predatory type of loans were happening to black folks and brown folks in the 80s. So that's why they were able to do them. So just looking out for, giving them the education about what this looks like. Like I talk about with the fines and liens from the city, look out for that. But that's the big thing, is really just letting them know what a predatory practice looks like. And I'm still learning too, because they're clever and they're ever evolving, and that's why you got to be creative in how you prevent them and alleviate them.
So how does repairing homes play a role in that?
So like I said, when you repair the home, you keep the city off their back, because they're not coming out and they're not going to put complaint-based property maintenance fines on the homes, because we're taking care of whatever is against code. So that's the big thing. And it's also putting money into the house, which leaves them less vulnerable, that they don't have to spend their savings on it. We'll take care of it. And then, it just leaves them less vulnerable to the developers that come out and say, oh, I see you have a lien on your house, or I see you have fines. Here's $300,000 for your house when it's really worth $500,000. And so a lot of times they've taken those, they need the cash to pay those things off, and then they find themselves out in Troutdale renting an apartment because they did that. So that's what the repairs do. They just keep the city off their back, and that's the area that we combat.
Right. So let's talk about allies a little bit. in Taking Ownership's mission, it really talks about community building. Why is that so important?
Because we're all we got. That's it. We can't do this on our own, no matter how much capitalism tells you we can. We have to, work together, and that's always been my mission. I know I have more to say about that, but I don't remember.
Strongest form of rebellion.
Huh?
Strongest form of rebellion.
Oh yeah. And community is the strongest form of rebellion. I mean, that's what they try to do, right? Divide and conquer. They're always trying to find a way to separate us, even though we have more in common than we do have differences. So that's what I want people to know, and that's why I want people to build community with each other and humanize each other. It's easy to dehumanize each other because of our differences, but it's really important to see what we have in common and how we can work together.
Yeah. So I think we're almost wrapped up with this interview. Is there any last things that you didn't mention you want to say?
Well, one thing I like to always say is just, you don't have to be an expert in something to make an impact. So
Yes.
I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. Still don't in a lot of ways. I just kind of went out there and did it. I just encourage people to, if you see a problem, go out in there and try something. You never know if it's going to catch fire. Somebody else might be doing it out there. Collaborate with them. But I just like to encourage people to put your brain together, visualize it, and go for it if you got the capacity, and collaborate as much as you can. That's a big thing I'm doing right now. Collaborating with all kinds of different pre-apprenticeship programs, so that way we get that free labor. And no, it's good. They get training. They get training towards their trade.
Definitely.
It's a great thing. It's a great symbiotic relationship. I just encourage that.
All right.
And we got another video. I wanted to share some of the homeowners we served, and they talk about the impact of the organization on them. So I think we're going to end with that, if that's all good with y'all. All right, thank you all.
Yeah.
I'm J.C. Wade. I live in the Woodlawn area. I've been living in this neighborhood 30 years. When I came here, though, this neighborhood was basically a lot of black folks in this neighborhood. And then they slowly but surely started changing.
Another cleanup project.
Instead of having people coming by saying hi, I have people coming by asking me to sell my house. When am I leaving? It's a big change. Some of the things that have been done here, which was they cleaned up the yard for me, and that was really a big job. Then a tree fell down. Like I said, the house got hit by lightning, and then I had to get the roof done. I was in a depressed state, and when you're in a depressed state, it's kind of hard to move around. And then when I start thinking about all the stuff that has came my way through this program, and it starts to bring tears to my eyes. It makes me happy, now I got a little pep in my step. Yeah, so it's a blessing.
My name is Lorene Wilder. I have lived in this neighborhood ever since I came to Portland, but not in this particular location, but it's all been in the Northeast. And I've lived in this house for over 50 years. Randal and the PDX organization has really done great things for me around my house. My backyard was a mess. I hadn't been able to get anything done, and they came in, and I tell you, it's just amazing, as the pictures will show you. And I'm so grateful.
My name is Betty Lovin, and I've been living in Portland since 1962, and I moved in this house in 1992. So it was fun when I first bought it because it was fun getting it together and stuff. But I've noticed that in the last 5 years, I've been falling behind. I was talking to my daughter, Tiffany, and I was telling her, what am I going to do? I got to get this roof, and I'm just stressing because I don't know what I'm going to do. And a couple of weeks later, she called me and she said, I know this guy, his name is Randal Wyatt, and he has this company, it is called Taking Ownership PDX, and she said, and I'll talk to him and see if he'll come out and look and see if he can do something for you, because I needed a roof really bad. I said, I don't know. I was really skeptical. I said, it sounds too good to be true. I don't know if I want to do this. And so the first time Randal came, he looked at my roof and said, we can do something for you. And I tell you, I slept better that night than I had in a long time. This is really wonderful. I just think it's really wonderful what Randal and this company is doing. It's great.
My name is Jimmy Wilson. I'm the owner of this food car park called J&Q Food Car Park. I'm in a financial quandrum to where I can't wiggle. I don't have no wiggle room.
Right.
So I got to deal with what I got. It's great here for you to come in, Randy, and get the acquaintance, because I don't have these kind of situations where people want to come and help me. They talk about help, but they never show up with a face. Randal from Taking Ownership is here today. Right now, today, as you can see, it's helping me clean my building, surrounding parking lot up. And they're doing a very good job with that. And I thank God for Randal, because today I wasn't able to financially do this by myself.
I heard about Taking Ownership on the news. That's where I heard about them for the first time. The organization did a lot for me and my family. Without the help that they provided, there's a big chance that we might not have been able to stay in this house for a long time. This house had several issues. The roof needed to be done. There were several things that needed to be cleaned up around the house, and I decided to reach out to Taking Ownership to see if they can help with the problem, and they did.
I heard about Taking Ownership PDX from my friend Melissa at church. Randal and some of his people came to the house and completely remodeled our kitchen. But my favorite part of the remodel is the really, really deep sink. Like, I can wash my 8-year-old child in the sink if I wanted. I don't, but if I wanted to, I could. Organizations like Taking Ownership PDX are important because it just helps our people know that our community cares about us, and you don't have to deal with the situation you're in by yourself.